Hello, everyone. Welcome to Barca News. It is March 24th, 2026. So, we're going to talk about how much Barcelona are budgeting for the summer transfer market and also who are Barcelona's two top targets for the summer. And finally, we're going to talk about Ferran Torres' contract renewal because we do have an update. We have a lot to discuss. So, let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. My name is Bo, and I'm still away from home. I'm still out of town, currently in London. This is why I'm bringing you this short live stream. This is not a podcast. I won't be reacting to the comments live. This is just a short live to bring you all the news while I'm away from home because, of course, I cannot film, edit, and post. Anyways, let's dive right into the news because there is a lot to cover, starting with an update in regards to the Negreira case because today Jose Maria Enriquez Negreira appeared at the legal clinic of the court in order to undergo a mental examination to see whether he is competent to testify. Now, as you know by now, Barcelona paid the former referee Jose Maria Enriquez Negreira between the years 2001 and 2018, or I should say they paid one of his companies for consultant services. They paid him in exchange for, or they paid the company in exchange for referee and reports. Of course, during those years, Jose Maria Enriquez Negreira was one of the honorary vice presidents of the technical committee of referee. There were, I think, 5 vice presidents. He was one of the 5. He had an honorary title. He didn't receive a salary and had absolutely no power at the CTA. But despite all of that, of course, an investigation was launched to see whether the money that Barcelona were paying Negreira's company was being used to bribe referees and influence the competition. It's been more than 3 years of an investigation, and no evidence has emerged showing that Barcelona truly bribed referees or even intended to bribe referees or influence the competition or even intended to influence the competition. All we have are referee reports that, well, Negreira's company issued and that Barcelona paid for. And no evidence has emerged despite the court changing their hypothesis. First, they said, it was direct cash payments, right? Barcelona pays Negreira, Negreira pays the refs. No evidence of that. And they changed the hypothesis. Oh, well, it was through promotion and demotion, right? Barcelona would pay Negreira, then Negreira would go ahead and promote referees who would be willing to help Barcelona. And when I say promote from second to first division, that's, of course, an increase in salary. Or he would demote referees from first to second division who wouldn't help Barca. Well, that also, no evidence of that because it turns out Negreira had no power over promotion or demotions, right? They try to change the hypothesis so many times, and, well, the results has always been the same. Zero evidence that Barcelona bribed any referees, intended to bribe any referees, or intended to influence the competition. But nonetheless, the court now wants, of course, Negreira himself to testify in court on what were those payments for. However, he is suffering from early onset dementia, and therefore today Negreira appeared per a court order to a legal clinic to undergo mental exams so the court can determine whether he is competent enough to testify or whether he, long gone. And of course, I'm speaking mentally because he is still alive and he won't be testifying. Of course, we'll hear the results pretty soon and I'll let you know once the results are out. And of course, those results will determine how much longer this investigation keeps getting prolonged. Now on to the next bit of news because, ladies and gentlemen, we are during a FIFA international break. However, the calendar right after the FIFA break is absolute insanity. I was reviewing it today and I was like, I gotta talk about this because what's coming up is crazy. Because check this calendar out once Barcelona are back. Of course, the first match is on April 4th. Atletico de Madrid versus FC Barcelona at the Metropolitano in La Liga. This, of course, could be a very important match for the league right now. Barcelona are only 4 points ahead of Real Madrid. And if Barcelona were to drop points against Atletico Madrid, that would make the distance that much smaller. So this is an absolute need of a win for Barcelona in La Liga. And then 4 days later, Barcelona versus Atletico de Madrid in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, followed by 3 days later against Espanyol, who is always a tough opponent. Thankfully, this time at the Camp Nou, which hopefully should make things a little bit easier. And then 3 days later, again against Atletico Madrid, this time at the Metropolitano in the Champions League. We have 3 matches against Atletico Madrid in 10 days. All of them will determine the fate of Barcelona in La Liga and, of course, in the Champions League, followed by Barcelona versus Celta Vigo, which of course Celta Vigo always tough opponent, but thankfully again at the Camp Nou. Getafe versus Barcelona. Getafe is always tough because they're very, very dirty. They like to waste time. They like to foul. They got disrupt as much as possible. And this one's at their stadium, which makes make things even more tough. And then Osasuna on May the 3rd at their stadium, and then 2 days later, May 5th will be the second leg of the Champions League. And of course, I forgot the first leg right after Getafe. So on the 28th, so 2 days later would be the semifinals of the Champions League if we qualify, if we be Atletico Madrid. So 2 days after Getafe. And then 2 days after Osasuna will be the second leg of the Champions League. And then right after that, 5 days later, El Clasico match at the Camp Nou, which could be the match that will determine the fate of La Liga. Then Alaves versus Barcelona at their stadium. Then Barcelona against Real Betis. Valencia against Barcelona. And then finally on May 30th, the final of the Champions League, if we make it all the way. So we have an incredibly hectic calendar filled with incredible matches that will determine whether Barcelona end the season with more trophies or whether it's just going to be the Spanish Super Cup. Now, let's continue with the news because, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a update on Barcelona's budget for the summer. As you know, Barcelona are currently not in the best financial situation. We have the summer transfer market right around the corner. Believe it or not, it's coming up and it's coming up quick. So, of course, Barcelona has sat down to do the math, to crank the numbers and figure out how much can they spend. And early reports are suggesting that Barcelona will be able to spend between 130 to 150 million euros on signings. That's the number from sources close to the club. I don't know how true is that's going to be because we all know that the situation is not the best. But of course, this summer, it's expected that we will reach the 1-to-1 rule. So maybe these numbers could eventually end up being true. Now, who do Barcelona want to spend this on? Well, Barcelona have two top priorities: center forward and center back, with the two top priorities being, of course, Alessandro Bastoni. We've talked about him a lot. Deco's number one option to reinforce that center back position, a left-footed center back, someone with plenty of experience, a world-class left-footed center back, someone that can fill that gap that Inigo Martinez left when he left to Saudi Arabia. Now, as you know, Inter Milan were initially not willing to offload Bastoni, but now they have changed their mind. They're willing to offload in the summer transfer market. And Barcelona believe that they can maybe negotiate his price for around 60 to 70 million euros for the Italian defender whose contract expires in 2028. And my question to you is, do you think that is possible? Let me know down below in the comment section. And the second priority, we said center back and center forward. Center back is Bastoni. And of course, for center forward, the other main priority is Julian Alvarez, Laporta's favorite option to replace Robert Lewandowski, someone who Atletico Madrid are insisting would cost 200 million euros, but Barcelona believe that they can sign him for 70 to 80 million euros. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one whatsoever, because even if Atletico Madrid agree for Julian Alvarez to leave, because they will, if Julian Alvarez makes a public statement saying, hey, I want to leave and I want to go to Barca, which is they saying that's what he wants and that's what Barcelona are waiting for, is for Julian to make the first move. But even if that happens, I don't see Atletico Madrid wanting to sell him for 70 to 80 million. After all, they paid 75 million. Once you add variables, I think it adds up to 95 million. I just don't see it happening. But anyways, that's what Barcelona believe they can sign him for. Of course, only time will tell. Now, of course, as we talked about before, the signing of a center forward, whether it be Julian Alvarez or someone else, will not affect Robert Lewandowski, because Barcelona's intention is still to extend the contract of Lewy, which expires this summer. They want to extend it by 1 more year with a much reduced salary, a much, much smaller salary, because right now he's one of the highest earners on the squad. I think he's earning 26 million euros gross. That's incredible. It's a lot of money. So Barcelona planning to renew him for 1 more season, reduce his salary by a lot, and of course for him to accept a secondary role, kind of like what he's having right now, because Barcelona believe that he, at his 37 or 38 years old, he still can be useful coming off the bench, scoring a late goal, and more importantly, he could be a mentor to this locker room full of very young kids. Now, Lewandowski was asked about his future after the what was the last match we played? Against Rayo Vallecano, and this is what Lewy had to say: regarding my future at Barcelona, what I said hasn't changed. I'm taking my time to decide what's best for me. I haven't made my decision. Now, reports are stating that Lewy will communicate his official decision in April. But either way, Barcelona plan to offer him a one-year contract renewal. If he accepts, great. If not, of course, he will be going somewhere else. Now, let's end today's video with an update in regards to Ferran Torres' contract renewal, because, of course, we're talking about center forwards. We're talking about renewing Lewandowski. What does this mean for Ferran, whose contract expires in 2027, and who Deco wanted to extend the contract of the shark turned sardine? And well, now the newest report stating that Ferran's contract renewal is on hold because his numbers, of course, have not been impressive. In fact, he hasn't scored in 12 consecutive matches. So right now the renewals are on hold, and it's not ruled out that Barcelona could try to push him out this summer, which of course I hope and pray we do, because Ferran Torres is long overdue for an exit. But of course, so far, the shark turned sardine has remained steadfast, has refused to leave. We'll see if this summer changes, but if not, I think we should just let his contract expire and let him go, because this whole new bullshit policy of Deco of you either get sold or you renew. No, my friend. There's always a third option. You let him go, because if you try to sell Ferran and he says no, what, you're going to renew him? No, thank you. Those are not the only two options, renew or sold. There's a third option. You let his contract expire and tell him, au revoir, it was great meeting you. Anyways, that is all for this video. I'm going live in a few more moments, so stay tuned to the channel. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. That was early. And as always, Pisca Barça.